Live. Oh, good gracious. I'm all. One more time. I'm sorry. In 3, 2, 1. Goodness. Go. It's Tuesday, August the 13th, 2013. I don't know where I am. I don't know what I'm doing, but here's what I do know. Live from the Technology City Podcasting Hall in rural Pickens, South Carolina. It's the Technology Show. I'm Matthew T.G.
I am Heath Mulligan.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Technology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. Heath, back in studio.
Yes, haven't seen you guys a couple weeks. We had 1 week where we had a funeral, and last week I was at the Illinois District Youth Camp. Had a great time. Want to send a shout out to Dale Munsell and all the great people up there. Made me feel very welcome. South Carolina District's own Mike Ennis Jr. was there with a group from Chicago. Great to see him. And
so where were you guys? Springfield?
We were in Springfield at the Lake Springfield Christian Assembly, and it was a wonderful campground. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Great. But it's always good to be here in this place.
In
the sacredest of podcasting halls.
That's right.
All right, Tej. So chat room a little bit different. At least we're using something different. You know about it. I don't. Yeah. So talk to our listeners and viewers.
So last week we made the switch. We were able to move from live stream to YouTube live stream. Thanks to all of you wonderful YouTube subscribers. We finally had the subscription count that enabled us to be able to stream for free.
Yes.
It is. It's a very cool thing. We're very happy about that. And as a part of all of this, we didn't have a little chat room last week. It was very last minute that we got the switch to happen last week, and so this week I've put it back together again. And so let's see here. I'm getting distracted. In our chat room, it's based on IRC, which the old Ustream chat was all based around IRC back when we used to stream with them. Okay. So it should be somewhat familiar to many of our loyal listeners from way back when. But all you got to do is you can look right on the live page. You can enter into the chat room. You have configuration options. I've posted them there on the live page. If you'd like to configure a client, like Tony, you've got your iPad configured.
It was easy for me to do because you walked me through it.
Heath's got his client, his IRC client configured, and there we go. We are ready to rock and roll on all that. So there we are.
All right, very good. Heath, we heard from our good friend Paul Tillman.
Yeah, a few month ago, talked about presentations for churches. So just want to read this note we got from Paul Tillman. I've got to give props where props are due. I have to admit that I thought TG was wrong about his simplified slides. The week of that podcast, I had one of the most complex slideshows that I had done in a long time, and when I had skipped over a point, my computer tech was scrambling to make things line up. After that week, I tried the simplified method and have been doing it ever since. Here were two important benefits for me. Number one, it drastically reduced the amount of time it takes me to put the slideshow together. Number two, my illustrations seem more focused. I still don't agree with you guys about running my own slideshow. I want to focus on delivery of the sermon, my voice, body language, the movement of the Holy Spirit, etc. And running the slides is a distraction for me. I'd rather have a tech in back with good notes that pays close attention to what I'm doing and saying. That aside, I did find the unified remote app for those of us on the Android Windows side of the world to be pretty effective, not just at running slides, but controlling a whole computer from my tablet or phone. The only downside I haven't found a workaround for yet is this. Working remotely, I can go from my slideshow to a video, but going from video back to the slideshow is not easy. So, Paul, thank you for the props and for the comment, and we will try to figure out how to make that workaround a little easier for you.
Maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, we don't use Windows, so that's going to be... Yeah,
and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, one time, Matthew runs his slides himself every week. I did it one time. He showed me how to do it, so I filled in from 1 week. I loved it. I absolutely loved running my own slides. I didn't... Yeah. So to me, it wasn't a distraction at all. When I put together the message, I put that together with my slides in mind, and so I can pull those in and out. And I saw you this past week, Matthew, do something which I think is nice when you're running your own slides. You went back to a slide intentionally.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say to the
Okay,
tech
now
guy.
go back. We need to go back. Go back.
Yeah.
Go back.
But nonetheless, I mean, Paul, it's a great email, and people are different. And if you got a good tech guy, that's really, or tech woman, and they're really on it,
Tech person.
Yeah, tech person.
Tech monkey.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, we don't. Yeah, let's not go down that trail. The new mascot. Thanks, Paul, for responding to us. And we would say to all of our viewers, listeners, this is the kind of stuff that we love. We love to have feedback from you, especially, Paul. We talked about Android, Windows, and the app you're using there. I mean, we're Mac users, Apple users, and so anyone out there in the Android, Windows world, if you've got tips, things that you think we should put on download of the week, especially, let us know. We'd be
and let me put up a little request here. Here's another way that you can leave us some feedback, and
30,
we would love that way. You can leave your own voice. You don't have to sound like Heath.
That's right.
You can call us and leave a voicemail, and we'll play it.
Because I did not sound like Paul at all.
No.
Anyways. All right. Hey, we want to welcome to the show today Jessica Harris. Jessica is a former porn addict who shares her continuing story of growth and freedom at Beggar's Daughter. Since first creating Beggar's Daughter in 2009, she's written for other ministries and is a regular contributor to the Breaking Free blog at Covenant Eyes. Her genuineness, transparency, approachability, and the love for Christ set her writing and speaking style apart. She has spoken in the United States and Canada at college conferences, youth retreats, and moms meetings. She is passionate about true purity, freedom, and about educating people about the presence and effects of pornography and lust in the lives of Christian women. In the past, she has worked as a high school teacher, youth leader, and as a crisis pregnancy counselor. In 2012, she released a self-published electronic devotional entitled Love Done Right, and we've linked you to that in our show notes. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We really appreciate you taking time out. One of our ongoing concerns here on this show has just been this whole issue of the proliferation of pornography on the internet and its impact on consumers. Now, we got on this topic a few weeks ago when we had Luke Gilkerson of Covenant Eyes, and he suggested that we get in contact with you. After that, we went to your website and became apparent why he recommended that we reach out to you and see if we can get you on the show. Let's start by you telling our listeners a little of your own story concerning pornography.
Certainly. I was exposed to pornography when I was 13 years old, and I think the backstory that's important here is that I actually grew up in the church. Since like 9 months before I was born, I was in a church. So I was active in youth group. I was your typical church girl. I wasn't the backslider that only went every couple weeks. And even from there, when I was exposed to pornography, pardon me while my earbud keeps coming out, while I was exposed to pornography, it somehow got a hold of me and just really seemed to speak to a need that I hadn't really thought I had. But that search for acceptance and that search for love and what it meant to be a woman in the 21st century. At that point, it was the 20th century still, but I found my identity in it. And when I first was exposed, I was exposed to hardcore pornography first off.
Wow.
And it was completely by accident. I was actually researching for a school project, and I had stumbled on the YouTube of 1999, I guess you could say. And it was a video archive website that had all these videos on it. And I had typed in whatever I was searching for. I don't remember now, but it was scientific. I mean, we're talking like Magic School Bus clips were on this page.
Yeah. Wow.
And in the middle of this page was a hardcore porn video.
Wow.
And so I'm just clicking through videos, and this video happened to the thumbnail and the title was interesting. So I'm looking for science stuff, and I clicked it, and that was the beginning of the end, as they say. And it was really strong. Hardcore pornography is very violent, and still it opened up that door of, oh, there's a whole seedy underbelly of the internet that is out there, and I want to figure out what this is. So I got involved in sex chatting for a little bit, going into chat rooms and doing what was called cybering, and now they call it sex chatting, which is the computer equivalent to sexting. Mm-hmm. and did that for a while. And pornography was my research for that. It was,
Oh, wow.
if a guy asked me to do something, obviously I've grown up in a Christian home. I had just started attending a public school. I have no clue what he's talking about. So I would actually search for whatever he had asked me to do and find videos of it and pictures of it so that I understood, even though I wasn't showing him, there was no webcam on my computer. I still was looking it up to figure out what was going on. And eventually I got hooked on the porn itself and just left the sex chatting alone and went right into hardcore pornography, which is different than what people typically think women do, because they typically think women, their porn is romance novels or even bridal magazines, the femme porn, the mommy porn, 50 Shades of Grey, that type of stuff is typically what women are addicted to. But here I went right into the man's world of hardcore pornography, and I was there for 4 years, and I was caught in college, and I had actually started to pray that I would get caught because I was trying to find a way out, and it had gotten to the point where it controlled my life quite literally, and my grades were suffering because I wasn't sleeping, because I was staying up all night, and if I wasn't on the computer, I was sitting in front of our television back when cable still was grainy on the channels that you didn't have, just waiting for scenes to pop through on the cable to the snow. So it had really gotten to the point where I couldn't control it anymore. As much as I wanted to, I would get up in the morning and think, Jessica, you're better than this. You shouldn't do this. Don't do this. I would print off pictures and light them on fire. I would save them to floppy disks and then crack the disks apart and then run magnets along the disk in the center. And I know that any younger viewers have no idea what I'm talking about. But break the floppy apart and run a magnet along the center, just trying to show that I was stronger than this. And it never worked. So I looked for resources, and obviously they're all for men. So I just began to pray that I would get caught. And when I went to college, I did get caught. I was 17 years old, and the dean of women at the college called me into her office. Obviously, I know why. It's just that sinking feeling in your stomach. You're thinking, oh, I'm busted. But I was ready. I was ready for someone else to say, Jessica, do you have this problem? And I was more than willing to say yes. I just did not know how to start that conversation. I didn't know how to come into church. Hi, I'm Jessica. I know I've grown up here, but guess what I do? I'm addicted to porn and I need help. It wasn't a comfortable conversation. Obviously, the church didn't even talk about men struggling with pornography. We didn't talk about it at all. So how can I, as a woman, go in there and start that conversation? So in college, I was called to the dean's office. And she showed me my internet history report and told me how it had been recorded. And there were pages upon pages of URLs for porn websites. And someone had gone down through and read them. And the ones that were definite pornography had been highlighted. And after talking about how horrible this problem was and how sick and disgusting it was, she said, we know this wasn't you. Women just don't have this problem.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I gave up because I felt like a freak. I felt like I didn't feel human then if I'm not a woman, which obviously I am.
Jessica, let me interrupt here real quick, because I mean this part. So I didn't know any of this. This is fascinating to me. One of the conversations that we had with Luke was that the numbers that we're beginning to see is that our old notions that pornography is simply a male problem is not right. And the proliferation among women now is escalating, and we can talk about that. And maybe you could even address why you think that is. But I mean, it seems to me that part of your story here is the fact that first that myth has to be broken. Am I right here? Am I close?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the whole reason why I even started to share my story, was just because I am a woman and I struggled with porn. Those are the facts. And you can sit there and deny the truth all you want to, but those are the facts. That's the truth. And you are very correct that we have to start breaking down that man-only barrier, because it does two things. First off, it excuses men because it tells them, oh, boys will be boys. If you struggle with pornography, it's not really a big deal. All guys do it. No big deal. And we lower the standards for them. And then we turn around and we isolate the women, too, who struggle with this. And there are many women. And to answer your question, I think the reason is because pornography is now anonymous. And it's not women creeping into a back alley to go to a corner store to get a magazine in a brown bag anymore. Right. It's a woman opening up her iPhone and going to a web page, going to a chat room, going wherever, and just watching whatever she wants, and no one's the wiser. So I think that's why it's affected women more. And then you could go into the idea that as the society around marriage and like that whole thing is broken down, and a result of the women's lib movement and those types of things, where women are getting to the point actually in secular mainstream that it's a woman's right to watch pornography. And if men can do it, women can too. And that there should be pornography specifically for women that's catered to women, which is where you get things like 50 Shades of Grey and Magic Mike, those types of things where we have, I think in the church, repressed sexuality so much, we don't talk about it, that a woman feels in a way liberated when she's allowed to celebrate her sex drive or celebrate her sexuality. And obviously, if we're not presenting the way you're supposed to do that in the church, then the only other alternative is the way you're not supposed to do that, which is the way the
good point. Right. Yeah, good point.
So Jessica, you're in college, you're 17 when you got caught, and they don't think it's you. So tell us how I know you said you were discouraged by that. How old were you when you finally started to confront this, and how did you find your way out of your porn addiction?
Well, immediately after that meeting, I actually, like I said, I got discouraged, I got frustrated, and I spiraled down to the point where I thought the only way I can live with this is to actually become a porn actress. So Christian girl, Christian college, and I'm 17, not even legally old enough to view pornography, and I'm thinking about becoming an actress. And in that time frame, a man actually asked me for pictures, and I sent them to him. And if there's one regret I have in my life, it's sending those pictures, because you never get those back. I can never undo that. God is good, and he took me away from that school and away from the high-speed internet and back to the world of slow dial-up, where that relationship couldn't continue anymore. And in that year that I was home with dial-up and away from this relationship online, I got to the point where I thought, okay, I can love God and serve God and still have this problem. It's not really that big of a deal. So I went on to Bible college, addicted to porn and going to Bible college. And one of the meetings there was an all-girls devotional, and the dean of women there stood at the front of the room, all women, all Christian women, and said to us, we know some of you struggle with pornography and masturbation, and we're going to help you.
Wow.
Gave you the freedom to address it.
Yeah.
She started the conversation. And then what they did is they had you, it wasn't even, that was one part, the whole meeting wasn't about that, but that was one part of this meeting about strongholds and how the devil can have a stronghold in your life and how it can keep you from being effective in serving God. And we were told to write down our strongholds. And so that was my chance to very anonymously and safely, it wasn't really anonymous because I put my name on it, but very safely confess this, because they had started the conversation. So I could say, my name is Jessica and my stronghold is pornography. I still didn't trust them and thought that I was going to get sent home. I still felt like they were just weeding out the bad kids, and that the girls who confessed this would be getting their pink slips and be sent home. And then I was going to tell my family what I had been doing and why I got sent home from Bible college. But that night they came to my dorm room and they said, Jessica, what you wrote on that slip was brave, and we are going to help you. And they did.
That's
For the next 2 years, it was intense mentoring and discipleship, not just in the area of pornography, because people get the misconception that pornography is just the pictures, and if you stop watching the pictures, it doesn't bother you anymore. But pornography, as you guys have talked about before with Luke, rewires your brain. And I think as women, it actually rewires your heart too, where you misunderstand love, and you misunderstand beauty, and you misunderstand faith, and you misunderstand God. There's so much more depth to this than just throw your computer out the window and don't pick it up again. There is a need for healing, and these women poured themselves into every area of my life, and that's when I started to find true freedom. Now, it's a journey still.
Sure.
You're always finding places that need healing and places that need grace, but it took me about a year to finally like break the chains of the actual addiction to the point where I could go home and not fall. Wow. It took me almost a year of that intensive discipleship and Bible study, and I prayed and tried so hard, and it just, if someone tells you it's not an addiction, they have no idea what they're talking about. They clearly have never been there. But that's Jessica, how I broke out.
I'm curious here, and I know this is off the cuff. I didn't send this question beforehand or anything, but I mean, your story is such a great story of a redemptive body of people who step into your life and talk about the courage of you facing this. Why do you think, and I'm just asking your opinion, why do you think that this doesn't happen more in the church? Sometimes, I don't know if it was with Luke, but we've had conversations with other people where we acknowledge that, unfortunately, you would think that in the church, this is where these kind of things should happen, but the reality is that it's the last place that it happens.
It's treated like anathema.
Yeah. What are your own, surely you've thought about this before, you have your own opinions on it.
Specifically related to women struggling with pornography, there's an age gap, there's a generational gap. It's huge. You're coming from churches who are mostly, no offense, gentlemen, led by older people, mostly led by men.
Yeah.
And you're wanting young women who have lived through the True Love Waits movement, basically, who have had abstinence and purity shoved down our throats, to come forward and tell you as a male that we struggle with pornography. Ooh. It's embarrassing, it's personal, and they don't feel safe. And then you have the women in the church, and I have met with many groups of women, and I'm not saying that they don't want to help, but they don't know how.
Yeah.
They think, I never struggled with this, I'm not equipped to deal with this, I don't know what she's going through. So you've got this generation kind of in limbo where there's nobody that they're comfortable reaching out to, and there's no one that's really comfortable to step up and say, let's help you with this. That's not happening.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on.
So take a little time here. Well, let me real quick here, Matthew. Just again, say something about the chat room, just really fast, in case we have people that have come in late.
Okay, yeah. So if you're watching on our live page, down underneath there is a spot where you can interact with us. You just put in yourself a little username there, fill out that CAPTCHA, that squiggly word thing. If you can decrypt that, you'll be in there. You feel free to send us your questions and your thoughts about it.
Okay, and Heath is monitoring the chat room. If you have questions for Jessica, and just throw them in the chat room, and Heath will get them out here. Jessica, let's kind of shift here. Talk about the concerns considering the effects of porn.
Well, other than the emotional ones, which I kind of touched on, where I have women who, we're not talking about backslidden people. We're talking about worship leaders. We're talking about youth group leaders who email me feeling like hypocrites, feeling like they don't have faith in God, feeling like God must hate them because of what they struggle with. So you've got a spiritual consequence there, but there's also mental and emotional ones. There was a study done in April, and I have the link on my website and my blog from a post from today that documented this idea of rape myth. And what rape myth is the idea in a woman that she believes that she is supposed to be treated violently, that she is supposed to enjoy being treated violently. And this is caused in part by hardcore pornography. 80% of hardcore pornography scenes contain some sort of violence, whether it be physical violence, whether she's getting smacked around, or whether she's being called names. So you have that mentality then that they're supposed to enjoy violence and aggression, which messes with their mentality. And then you also have these women who just feel they're not able to be intimate with their husbands, which is also a symptom among men too, where real life intimacy is difficult. Right. They're isolated, they're depressed. The list just goes on. And then you have women who actually act out. They get to the point where they think, oh, whatever, why don't I just do this in real life? And they're meeting with strangers in hotel rooms, they're hooking up with people online. The effects are huge and far-reaching for women.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about in the pre-show that our listeners didn't have privy to is that we have been encouraged on this show in that there are organizations out there and there are research studies that have nothing to do with the church, but who are raising the concern and who are sounding the alarm, especially when it comes to, I mean, you hear ideas of the brain actually being remapped in ways that are not good, and touching on what you just said, the inability to have a meaningful relationship with their spouse, and that any kind of a sex act that means anything to them is happening outside of the relationship, not inside the relationship.
Right.
I read some research somewhere. I don't have the link to this, but I'm pretty sure I read
oh no.
that they mapped a cocaine addict's brain and a porn addict's brain. And it was the same, like where damage was being done to the brain was almost identical. And it was just like you said, just crazy stuff. Jessica, most of our viewers and listeners are in some form of ministry, whether, pastor or missionary or youth ministry. What advice do you have for them in terms of addressing pornography? I mean, at this point, what is the church getting right and what is the church getting wrong?
In regards to this specific struggle of women struggling with pornography, I don't know. The church really isn't doing much about it at all, so it's not necessarily something they're doing right and something that they're doing wrong. Other than not talking about it.
Maybe the question is, where do we start with it? How about that?
Right. I encourage people just to start the conversation. When I go to churches or when I go to colleges, I share my story just as a way of opening that door for them and giving them the real life face of a porn addict. That we're not creepy people that look like serial killers. I think sometimes we get this mentality that all porn addicts end up being like freaky serial killer, rapist, social outcast people. And that's not the case. Right. So I go and kind of offer myself, it's not easy, as a face for them and someone to kind of take that initial shock and shame and let them think poorly of me. They don't even know me, but let them, if they're going to judge, let them judge me. And then let the women underneath their care be able to step forward and hopefully just start that conversation. But that's where it has to start. We have to start just having that conversation and not thinking that people are exempt. We can't think, oh, well, because she's on the worship team, surely she doesn't have this problem. Or, oh, well, that's a pastor's kid. Surely she doesn't have this problem. You would be surprised how many preachers' kids and missionaries' kids email me struggling with an addiction to pornography. And they are scared to death because they think that if they come forward, their fathers are going to kill them, or that there's going to be repercussions to their family because there's not a conversation of grace surrounding this at all, because we're not talking about it at all. So just what I encourage pastors to do is when they're talking about pornography, because they are now, but they always kind of slide it in at the end. Now, men, watch what you're doing on your computers, men, watch out what you're doing with your eyes, or these men that struggle, just take men out of there. My old pastor, I sat in one of his sermons and listened as he talked about how sick and how disgusting and how horrible porn addicts were and how nasty these people were that watched it. And it broke my heart because I'm thinking, if I were one, that wouldn't make me want to change. That would make me want to run. If that were me, and if I weren't recovered and weren't standing where I am now, I would find no grace in that. And so I did say something to him, and I left the church for other reasons. And one of the old members that still attends there says, Jessica, you'll never believe what happened. He stood in the pulpit and he says, Men struggle with pornography, and now more and more women are struggling too. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
That's all these women are looking for, is someone to acknowledge that they are struggling and that they are allowed to struggle. We're not okay with them struggling.
Right.
We want them free, but they are allowed to be there. They're allowed to have this struggle.
Well, go ahead, Matthew.
Seriously, one of the things that's just fascinating to me in this whole conversation is that, like, we're so afraid to carry one another's burdens on that with the people that we know that it takes that anonymous person, like you said, to step in and bear that shame. That's shameful in itself. I mean, that we're at a point that's kind of how, as the church, we operate. That's our mode of operation. Yeah. But it's just absolutely fascinating to me. And I wonder if, I mean, I hate, as a pastor, and all three of us here around these tables are have been at one point pastors, but is that what it would take to literally bring, like, maybe I can't start the conversation here and expect that people are going to say, step forward and feel like they can talk about this. Maybe it takes that disconnected from, but that just doesn't seem right. I just can't wrap my mind around it.
I don't know. Jessica, one of the things I've been thinking of the whole time you've been talking is on our district here, we have the district superintendent has oversight of about 100 pastors, and it's all along the spectrum, youth all the way to retired. And I remember his first year here at one of the pastors' gatherings, he talked about this publicly. He didn't say a whole lot, but he said this, and it was a little bit controversial at the time. He said, if you are in ministry and you are struggling with pornography, there are two things I want to say to you. Number one, we're not going to throw you under the bus. Number two, come to us, and we're going to covenant with you to see you get victory over that. And the result was that there were 2 or 3 pastors who did come forward, and there's great one story in particular, a great story of it, all that pastor needed was some accountability. Now, the sad part of that is, and the controversial part is, some people had the attitude, well, boy, if you're having to say that to ministers, then you already have a problem. And part of the truth of what you said a moment ago is that people fear condemnation if they speak publicly. The reason they fear it is because they've seen it.
Right. Yeah.
That unfortunately it's a reality within the church, and that's we're getting into bigger issues then.
Well, a lot of times the church just doesn't talk about any sort of sexual issues. We've been doing a series through the 7 letters of Revelation, and just about every single one of those talks about some sort of sexual immorality, something that's going on in the church. And those are straight from Jesus. And like that has just, for me personally, called out the importance of all sexual issues, whether it's pornography addiction or intimacy in a marriage, but that as a pastor,
there's a whole world that we're just not
even talking about.
Yeah. Jessica, this is fascinating. Towards the end of the show here, we want to give you an opportunity to let our listeners know how they can get in contact with you. Before we let you go, I also found out that you have done considerable work in the past with crisis pregnancy centers, and this is something that's close to our hearts as well. And so I just wanted you to just speak to that a little bit and talk about your own involvement there.
Certainly. I went to a crisis pregnancy center in 2010, late spring of 2010, and started working for them. And the path that had led me there was I was working with young women at my church, and I just felt like they were too perfect. It sounds horrible, but a small church, rural church, and they're just good girls. They had their issues, but I really feel like my calling is to deal with the ones who are messed up. Like, that's what I do. So I decided to go to a pregnancy center. And worked there for 2 years, evening shift as a pregnancy center counselor. And what we do as pregnancy center counselors is the woman comes in, she's facing a crisis pregnancy. She may or may not be considering abortion. What she's just looking for is more than likely actually someone to listen to her and to hear her out and figure out what's going on. But also she's looking for answers and connections and resources to help her deal with this pregnancy. In the 2 years that I worked there, I just finished this last fall, I can count the number of non-Christians I counseled on one hand.
Wow.
And the startling reality is that, and I have this posted on my site too, is that 65% of abortions are obtained by Christian women.
Yeah.
And as a pregnancy center counselor, that totally opened my eyes to really the sexual brokenness in the church. And I was rather surprised at how much the two things, my ministry online and then my ministry as a pregnancy counselor, how they were the exact same thing, how I was giving the exact same message, how I was dealing with the exact same problems, and it just manifested itself in different ways.
Is part of that
life-changing experience.
That 65%? I mean, is your own opinion on that? That it's again trying to avoid being stigmatized within the church.
Yes, because pregnancy is an obvious sign of sexual immorality.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way to do that. Most of the Christian girls that came into me, their biggest fear of keeping their baby was that they would be considered hypocrites. That was it. That was their fear, was that their family would disown them, or they would be considered hypocrites. And they would not be a hypocrite. They would rather go get an abortion than to face the shame and judgment that they knew they were going to face if they started to show.
Wow, God help us. Yeah.
Why do you think it's important? I mean, our church is very involved with our local pregnancy center, but I mean, I feel like the church has been very vocal about pro-life, but not plugged into local pregnancy centers. What can churches do to get plugged in with their local centers?
Yeah, and Jessica, make the case here. This is an axe that I grind, but go ahead. I'll let you grind on it for a while.
Oh, I can grind it too.
Yeah, please do.
Here we go. I think that churches they're not pro-life. They're anti-abortion. And
nice.
And the one thing that just is when churches think that they're doing a service by standing outside of a pregnant or an abortion clinic, holding signs of disembodied fetuses and screaming at the women going into these clinics. That is not grace. That is not the love of Christ. That is not what we're called to do. Abortion is more than a political issue, and we have got to stop approaching it like a political issue. This is a spiritual issue, and these women, for the most part, are hurting, they are confused, they are broken, and again, they're looking for answers. We're not giving it to them, so they are going somewhere else.
Right.
Okay, we've never applauded. We've never applauded in this. Come on, this is the first applause in Technology Show history.
Sorry, it's something.
Jessica, I remember one time I had an opportunity to address probably 500 or 600 Wesleyans, and I made this statement. If you are not supporting your local pregnancy center, then do not get up on Sunday morning and preach against abortion. Yeah. Just stop it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because when those women, what I like to think about this as, if you're standing on the side of the road holding a picket sign, screaming and yelling, you're a fan on the field. That's what fans and cheerleaders do. If you want to get involved you get on the front lines with those women, you sit across from them, you support them, you connect them to resources, you get them help. And that's the biggest complaint the abortion industry has about the church, is that we're all about saving women's babies, but we're not about helping the women. We're not about connecting them with resources. We just want them to not have abortions. That's their biggest complaint against us.
Yep.
And crisis pregnancy centers, it is. The crisis pregnancy centers are the front line.
I had a friend in college.
Real quick. Great point. Great point. That the pregnancy centers are the front lines.
Yes.
It's not the picket line that's the front line.
Right. And I had a friend in college who was very active in picketing abortion clinics. And I said, dude, by the time somebody's there, you've missed them. You have missed the mark. And what we've got to do is we've been a step behind. We've got to get a step ahead by education in our churches and in our communities, and by partnering with these pregnancy centers. I amen everything you said.
Well, and I don't know what it's like in every place. So let me speak from my context. I'm in Pickens County, South Carolina. We probably have 100 to 200 what I call evangelical churches. And this is what I know, that if all of those churches would put feet behind and cash behind their stance of pro-life, that our local pregnancy center, which is 4 miles down the road here, would not have to struggle month to month just to have the resources that it takes to keep that place open. And that's the source of my frustration. And my guess is, Jessica, that we are not abnormal here.
Yeah.
No, if someone wants to get involved in the pregnancy center, this is what I would encourage you to do. Call them. Figure out what they need, because so many of them need counselors, and it does not take a rocket scientist or an actual degree to be a pregnancy center counselor. These women, more often than not, are just looking for someone to listen to them.
Yeah.
I could walk into the door of my counseling room, sit down across from her, introduce myself, say, tell me your story, and sit back, and it had nothing to do with her pregnancy. It had nothing to do with the baby. It was about growing up in the church, or how she was abused when she was younger, or maybe she was raped. It's other issues, and we need to be involved in dealing with those, because that's where life change happens, and that's where heart change happens. And there's fundraisers that pregnancy centers have. If you call them, they can tell you how your church can be involved.
Right.
They will give you invitations to their fundraising banquets. They're not money-hungry agencies. Trust me. Like, most of us volunteer. There's 30 volunteers that staff the pregnancy center where I worked, 5 paid staff members, and we are a pregnancy clinic, which means that on top of the counseling, we also offer healthcare services, STD screening, pap smears, pregnancy testing, and ultrasounds there at the clinic. Not all of them do that, but you can still help them. They can still use your help. They can use your ideas. You can volunteer, even if you're not a counselor. We had men volunteer in our clinic just to be there to protect us in case somebody came in, and it happened multiple times. An angry dad or an angry uncle that drug his daughter there to have or his niece there to have an abortion, and then found out it wasn't an abortion clinic, got angry and started going after counselors. We needed men to protect us. We called them night guards, and we needed them. So we have needs in that ministry, and I left only because I didn't have enough time to do it all. And I would love to go back, but I also felt like my mission was to get to the girls before they ever needed to get to the pregnancy center. But you're right. If they make it to the front step in an abortion clinic, you're too late. You might catch one or two, but you're too late.
Yeah.
Hey, we have in our chat room, we have your Bible college roommate today. No, don't at least that's what she claims here. And she says that sitting and listening to you, that she is on fire and inspired you to start a girls only Bible study at her church. And so, yeah, we don't know your name, but she says, "Way to go, Jess."
Yeah.
Well, I have 7 of them. So
Yeah.
Another thing, too, in the chat room, I noticed earlier here, one of our listeners, Jeremy Gertis, talked about when he was in college, that it was actually male and female students that were asking for internet filtering as a form of some kind of accountability. Interesting that it was coming from the students. Now, I'm sure there were adults, too, within campus, but here again, the feeling among the students themselves that they needed some kind of accountability. Well, Jessica, this has been just a delight to have you. I wish you'd just take an opportunity, our interview with you today. There may be people who want to get resources from you. They may want to contact you about having you come speak. Where can they do that, and who do they need to contact?
Well, you can contact me. I'm a one-person show. So just send me an email. It's jessica@beggarsdaughter.com, or you can just visit the website and use the contact form. I have a Facebook page, and you can follow on Twitter. I also want to recommend anybody who's looking for a great resource, and especially if in your church you want to think about starting up a support group for this, fantastic, gospel-based, grace-centered resource is Harvest USA's small group curriculum, Sexual Sanity for Women. And I have a link to that on my site. It is the first resource for women struggling in pornography that I have read that actually ministers to women struggling in pornography. It's not a man rewriting the he's to she's to make it more sense. This is dealing with the emotional pain, the broken backgrounds that they may come from. And it's not just pornography. It's pornography, lust, fantasy, masturbation, and same-sex attraction, all of them lumped into this great resource. specifically for women in the church who struggle with sexual sin.
Wow.
So Sexual Sanity for Women by Harvest USA. The link's on my site in a blog post today, but it's actually a great resource.
Found it here, and we'll link everybody to it.
Yeah. Also, let me just promote your ebook, Love Done Right. This is it's 99 cents a copy. That's a deal. I looked it up and saw that and got it right away. And so we just encourage our listeners and viewers to do the same and check that resource out. Jessica, thanks so much for taking time out. And we would just kind of love to keep a loose association. And if there's anything in terms of research, something that you think needs to catch our attention, and you want an avenue to people in ministry, feel free to give us a call. And even if it's having you come in for 10 minutes of the show just to share something with us, we would love to form that kind of relationship.
Yeah, thank you for what you're doing.
It's a pleasure. It's a burden, but it's a pleasure at the same time.
Yeah. All right. Well, blessings on you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, just offers a great resource to the church. I'm sitting here thinking, one of my responsibilities on the district is the ordination track, and so twice a year we bring together 30 to 40 people who are preparing for ministry. I'm sitting here wondering about the possibility of having someone like Jessica, where you bring them in like what we're doing now, but a live session, and let her give a presentation, but then open it up to questions.
Man, I've already got my wheels are turning. I'm contacting my youth leader. You need to watch this. You got to see this because this is just a big deal. And I feel like Sabrina and Jessica get along really well.
And how about her story when they pull her in? It's like, okay, I've been caught, but this is what I want. And then the response is, well, we know it's not you.
Yeah, and you think about if it is like she said, like she was hoping to get caught.
Yeah.
And now this wide open door to get away from it again. Man, that's tough.
And then also how she begins to deal with it. So you have the opposite approach from this Bible college where they say that they don't say you might be struggling. We know some of you are. I told you guys back in June I went to this theological symposium, and right now on our Christian campuses within our Wesleyan schools, that's what I'm talking about, they have taken the position now, and this is with ministerial students, but all students in general as well, that they take the position that they are viewing porn. We're here to bring accountability to that.
Yeah. And let me just, I've done this at my own church, where we have watched a technology show interview as part of our Wednesday night Bible study. We watched the interview, and then we watched that for 30 minutes, and then we have a 30-minute discussion. And I would just, I know it's a shameless plug, but this would be a great one.
I've done that 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Don't tell YouTube, but you can actually download one of our episodes on YouTube. Now that we are live streaming on YouTube, we got to say that real quick. Don't tell them, but you can do that. Or you can contact me if you'd like a copy of the video.
Or you can get all of our, on Amazon Prime.
She raises another issue I thought was good, that there are some generational things that have hindered us from addressing this in the church. And so, she admits that for some women of, a couple of generations ago, they didn't struggle with it. They don't even know how to address it.
Yeah.
And now because of the internet, pornography is just ubiquitous. It's just everywhere. You don't have to go somewhere and get it. And so she gives us something to think about as far as that's concerned, the generational aspects of this.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, tell you what, here, time's getting away. Let's go ahead and see if we can get through They Said It.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do that.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
Well, I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
Using the same tactics used by gay rights activists, pedophiles have begun to seek similar status, arguing their desire for children is a sexual orientation no different than heterosexual or homosexuals. Jack Miner, in an article where he chronicles the changing definition of pedophilia over the last 40 years. Source, the Greeley Gazette.
Called it.
We have found a holy thing in a chest. It's a piece of a cross, and they think it's from the cross. A historian at Turkey's Miramar Sinan University of Fine Arts telling reporters that archaeologists working at an ancient church in Turkey think they've unearthed a piece of the world's most famous cross, the one used to crucify Jesus. Source, USA Today.
Many gospel stories, for example, such as the story of Mary and Martha in the Gospel of Luke, can tell us far more about women's roles if we stop to pay close attention, something male writers have not done. The ancient sources mention the women, but over time less and less attention was given to their role. Really, they've been airbrushed out of history. Professor Kate Cooper from the University of Manchester, commenting on her 5-year study, in which she concludes that women's role in the ministry of the early church is underreported and underappreciated. Source, phys.org.
High-tech Japanese toilets are vulnerable to attack from their manufacturer's own Android app. The Atlantic reports a security advisory from researchers at TrustWave says all Inax Satis Bluetooth toilets have the same Bluetooth pin 0000 hard-coded, allowing anyone with the My Satis Android app to control any toilet within range. Aaron Saporas reporting on the Nipponese Smart Toilet, which has a bidet, music player, and deodorizer, all controlled via Bluetooth. Also, it apparently can be hacked. Source, The Verge.
So the reverse button, when you hit the reverse button, oh, dude, just watch out, man.
So
I had
last
to
week,
hack my toilet the other day.
week, Jeremy Gertis joined us for They Said It because you were out of studio.
Yeah.
And this was one of the stories that he sent me. I almost ran it last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hate to be sitting on a toilet that's been hacked.
Yeah.
That's not good.
All right, so real quick, this thing about the cross. I was thinking about this. You know, most of the people there when Jesus died did not fully comprehend that he was going to be raised from the dead.
Right.
Therefore, they didn't know that the cross would be, because I'm assuming that in the Roman culture they reused the crosses.
You're being way too sensitive. Yes, absolutely. If you do any sort of research in history, they say that all of the cross fragments that used to be carried around as icons in the ancient, churches, that you could have formed like 30 crosses or more out of all of this.
In this article, they have a John Calvin quote where Calvin said you could build a ship with all
Yeah,
the pieces of the cross.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's one of those things. This is actually something that like I take pride in. I actually had somebody out of my congregation say, wouldn't it be cool if we knew where Jesus' tomb was? And I say, I think it's awesome that we don't. Because after his resurrection, nobody cared. It wasn't made a place where we go and we're like, oh, this is where Jesus, was buried because he's dead. Like that's lost to history. We have a guess, but it's lost.
If he's not buried there, it's not Jesus' tomb anymore.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not his tomb. It's your tomb if you're actually buried there.
Well, let me hit on these other two stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
One is one that you sent me. The one from the Greeley Gazette. Here's what I want you to notice. Notice the date on that. It's a 2011 article. People are critical of the article, that this is being overstated. The idea that pedophilia and pedophiles are using the same argument, one of orientation. But the fact of the matter, they are. We have There are a group of psychologists out of Canada, which since 2011, who are arguing this. There are also laws in California within the penal code that have changed as a result. And so this article is simply there for you to look at. Jack Miner kind of gives a history in psych journals how pedophilia has been redefined, and it continues to be redefined. And part of my reason for putting it out here is whenever I raise this issue, this is what I'm met with. People say, "Oh no, that's crazy talk. That's not serious stuff." And I'm just here to tell you that it is serious, that it's out there, and that movement is afoot. And there it is. And I appreciate Heath for sending me the article.
Yeah. I think we are getting into. Yeah, we're getting into a season of cultural history where it is going to be no holds barred on all of this stuff.
Well, again, I've said this before. It's sexuality taken out of the category of morality.
Yeah.
So we don't want that within morality. And so what then are the rules and the guidelines that govern us? And I loved it when you sent this article, because my purpose has been to say to people think, oh, you're crazy, Tony, that this is not a serious movement. I'm telling you that it is a serious movement, and it's very serious in the psych war and in the psych community, and in pure reviewed journals. Yeah. These articles are showing up.
Yeah.
And
This the statement that, where morality is being disconnected from sexuality.
Yeah.
And this isn't the first time culturally
Good point.
this has ever happened.
Good point.
I mean, I'm not trying to minimalize it, but again, I'm always pounding this drum.
Good.
I'm always pounding this drum. The world isn't getting worse. You can
Yeah.
go back through. There's plenty of other, and you can, if you want to see where we're going, history will repeat itself. Watch how those cultures made their way through.
Paul in the early church, you probably can make the argument, faced a culture where morality had been separated from sexuality.
Probably you can make. Yes, you can make that argument.
Well,
Very good. Very good.
That
Very
was
good,
that was a major cause of the fall of the Roman Empire. When
There's debate about that, but
civilization, when a society starts going crazy on some of this stuff, and to me, that's where you look at history repeating itself as far as American culture.
I want to speak to critics, because there are critics that could get on here and say, oh, wait a minute, you overplay that card. And so I will concede that you can overplay that card, but I don't think any historian would say that it wasn't at least a contributing factor.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe not the factor,
Right.
but a contributing.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
It may not even be in the
so
top
many
10
different
of
things.
factors, but it's
really,
a factor.
Really fast here. We don't have time to go into it, but I thought I would love to see this 5-year study that
Yes.
Professor Kate Cooper did.
Yes.
The article is not real detailed, but it's going to talk about her study, and I'm sure that if you follow the trails, you can get to it. But basically saying the reason I think this is interesting, the book that we've talked about here on our show, The Rise of Christianity by Rodney Starks. Rodney Starks does his great research upon how the church valued women and how women were active in the church. And what he's doing is he's taking the historical documents and he's simply reading them. What she's saying in her 5-year study is that before Christianity becomes the official religion, there seems to be a broad swath and path cut out for women in ministry, and it is afterwards that path seems to close. And she uses, I like that she uses the phrase, the history of women in ministry has been airbrushed over.
Yeah. And I think she's. I mean, that's a very, very good point. I mean, the main mention of people who contributed financially to Jesus' ministry were all women.
Yeah. He had a huge female following.
Little known fact about Rodney Stark: carried out a lot of his research, overseas, traveling, didn't take airplanes, actually rode on the back of his brother, Tony. I mean, they're just putting that out there. Okay.
What?
Gee, Tony Stark.
Oh, gotcha.
See, you should have been the one that got that.
I
not me.
was, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to manage a chat.
Because I picked up on that just from ignorance. I've heard enough of you guys talking to. All right. Hey, let's talk about next week's show. On the show will be David Higgle. David, his interest is ministers lasting in ministry. The concern behind it is ministers who are not lasting in ministry. The attrition rate in ministry is high. And so he's going to talk about that a little bit, and Lord willing, talk about some things that will help us to endure in ministry. Time's getting away. Let me just real quick. We scheduled someone. Now, it's a February interview. So we're months away.
Far out there, yeah.
Yeah, we're months away. It's the first Tuesday in February. But Teej, I know that you particularly.
Yeah, I got us down the path of this.
You did.
Russell Moore, author of the book Adopted for Life, Talked about that book many times.
Yeah.
Where's Dustin and Hannah Wilson? Wish they were listening today because we need to get them to cheerlead this episode. They're the ones who introduced me to that book. We are excited to have him on the show, and honored too, really. I mean, when you look at the things that he's done, we're actually very honored that he's coming on our show. So, yeah,
he's a very busy schedule, and the fact that he's taken time out to say, you know what, I'll grant this interview.
Grateful.
Yeah, very much so. All righty. Hey, Heath, where can our listeners find you on what is called the internet?
I am Heath Mulliken everywhere on the internet. HeathMulliken.com, on Facebook, Twitter. Please come.
Come.
So I'm MatthewTG.com online, and I'm working over the next couple of weeks to get our link on our webpage to where, as a way of supporting the show, where you can start your Amazon shopping at thetechologyshow.com. Like, you go to our page and then click the Amazon link, and then if you order stuff off Amazon, it doesn't cost you anything extra. It just gives us money. so as we work on doing that, I'll be working on that. So if you want to find me, that's where I'll be constructing all that.
So let me piggyback on that to say that one of the things we're working on here, we're starting to get aggressive with, is advertising for our show.
Yes.
This would be huge for us if you have suggestions, outlets, people you want to put some kind of money.
$1 million.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's a simple equation. The more money you have, the better equipment that you can get. And we're
family.
we're at a point here where every time we upgrade, we max it out within 2-3 months, and we have literally done that with this show 2 or 3 times. I remember when we got.
We were running off a dual core 3 gigahertz iMac. Then we were running off of this quad core iMac. Then I built a custom Hackintosh. We've used it for a year, and it's reaching its full capacity.
He's given her all she's got, Captain. She can't take any more.
Don't quit your day job. All right, you can find me at AKC64 at both Facebook and Twitter. And if you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechologyshow.com. If you want to send us an email like Paul Tillman did, can do that at thetechologyshow@gmail.com. Or better yet, you can leave us a voicemail by calling 3049-THEOLOGY. That's 304-986-5649. Leave us a message, and I'm telling you, this is a promise. We might play your message on the air. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Later.